Good morning to all of you. Last class we were discussing the condensation heat transfer, the condensation over a flat vertical plate. We discussed and derived the expression for the local and average heat transfer coefficient and also the heat flux and accordingly the rate of condensation, which was developed by Nusselt and known as a very popular expression as Nusselt's expression for condensation over a flat vertical surface. Now, at the end of the last class, a few questions came up by few students and I discussed with them, and I want to discuss it en masse to inform you that when we discussed about the inclined plate, and I told that in inclined plate when the film takes place, the effective gravity is, if the angle with the horizon is theta, effective gravity is g sin theta, so that in the entire expression g can be replaced by g sin theta, because the component of g which acts in this direction, if we take the coordinate system along the plate and in the transverse direction at x and y. So the question came that there is an effective gravity in the y direction, so therefore del P del y cannot be made 0 from the Navier-Stokes equation. Is 100% correct. In that case, del P del y is not 0, it is balanced by the body force. Pressure force is balanced by the body force, there is no motion. But what happens is that even if del P del y is not 0, is a very good question. I told the del P del y not equal to 0, but it is constant. And it doesn't matter whether there is a pressure drop across the thin film, which is nevertheless not 0, identically 0, but del P del x in the vapor region and the film remains the same. And what we require is the del P del x expression to solve for the velocity profile. Even if there is a pressure difference or pressure gradient in the y direction, it doesn't matter, which is taken care of by the effective body force or the component of weight in the direction of y. This is number one query. And another question, which is a lovely question, and I appreciate few of you asked me, still it is there with me, but the only answer I will tell you is that it is following a classical convention without any what I will call that way logic, that sir, when we solve a conduction equation with a fluid whose motion is either extremely small or there is no motion at all, and we simply solve the conduction equation, you will see these things afterwards also. Of course, I think in your free convection these things have not been covered because it is beyond your scope, that at the onset of Bénard convection, the flow between two plates, lower one is heated, upper one is cold. So the convective current takes place, which is known as Bénard convection. But before certain delta T temperature difference, the fluid motion is inappreciable. There is no fluid motion. The motion is arrested by the viscous force. Only after a certain temperature difference the motion sets in. So below that temperature difference, when the fluid motion is totally inappreciable, we solve the conduction equation. There are many cases where we solve the conduction equation totally neglecting the advection effect. But whenever it is a heat transfer between a solid and a fluid, the beauty is that we refer it to a convection equation in the conduction limit and define the heat transfer coefficient. So though heat transfer coefficient comes only in the convection heat transfer, which is the heat transfer by conduction affected by flow, affected by advection, but even if advection doesn't affect it or it is so small, we solve only the conduction, but still we define the heat transfer coefficient because that we are dealing with the fluid adjacent solid. That's all. This is the convention, and there are many such situations in heat transfer where we express heat transfer coefficient, which is never done in case of solid, heat transfer through solid. This is a very good question, and I am happy to tell you and to document it for a wider mass. Okay. Now, I will tell you something just before closing this discussion. This flow takes place like that, and there is a Reynolds number for condensate flow. You know, this is the condensate flow, this is the liquid film, liquid film flows, liquid which is known as condensate, which is known in the practical terminology as condensate. There is a Reynolds number of condensate flow which is defined as density of the liquid, the average velocity, the hydraulic diameter divided by the liquid viscosity. And in all such expressions, the liquid density, viscosity, everything, here I am not putting L because viscosity is only for the liquid. Since the density of the vapor comes into question, so I am denoting it as rho L and rho V. So all the liquid properties are usually evaluated at a mean arithmetic mean temperature of TW and TV. That means TW plus TV by 2, and this is known as, in our language, film conditions. Sometimes we tell the properties are evaluated at film conditions, means the arithmetic average, all properties are evaluated at temperature, which is arithmetic average of the surface and the vapor temperature. So this is rho L mu evaluated like that, and V average by definition, you know, fluid mechanics, it is the volumetric flow rate divided by the cross-sectional area. Divided by the cross-sectional area. That means one can write that m dot by rho L into A. And dH is the hydraulic diameter, which is 4 area by perimeter. That is enough, but some information I give you, we will not go for any other analysis, that this Reynolds number definition is important because beyond the Reynolds number, RE greater than 1800, instability occurs at the thin film interface and the flow becomes turbulent, and this instability onset takes place with the formation of ripples at the surface. In practice, it has been found even at a relatively much lower Reynolds number than 1800, sometimes the instability occurs, because this depends not only on the Reynolds number, sometimes on the surface condition and other properties of the liquid apart from the rheological property mu and rho. So therefore, this is just for an information that a thin film flowing past the plate may become turbulent depending upon the situation where the Reynolds number is high or low. In practice, it is not always that a plate will be there for condensation. Usually tubes are there. Yesterday at the beginning I told you the examples where the liquid, one of the fluids, is flowing through the tubes. For example, the power plant condenser, the condenser of the refrigerator, the water tube in a boiler. So usually the flow takes place through tube, and usually the tube cross section is circular, but various cross sections are tried to enhance the rate of heat transfer. Just I tell you certain things, that in a circular tube, usually what we use, it looks like that. If tube is horizontal, like this, the horizontal tube, and if the vapor flows like this, either quiescent vapor or vapor flows with a very gentle velocity, then what happens, it looks like this. The flame grows, the picture is like this, and trickles down the surface of the, this is the tube, trickles down the surface, this is the film, this is the film, trickles down the surface of the tube. Now the rate of heat transfer will be increased if we can decrease the film thickness, like a decrease of thermal boundary layer. If you decrease the film thickness, you know the temperature gradient will be enhanced, delta T by thickness of the TW, TV minus TW divided by delta. It is just like the reduction of thermal boundary layer. So in any condensation problem, our motto will be to drain the condensate, this is the condensate, to drain the condensate, this is condensate, to drain the condensate, this is the terminology, to drain the condensate as fast as possible so that the thickness of the film at any location is small. So therefore, different cross-sectional shape has been considered which gives an effective gravity more, so that this can make the drainage of the condensate faster. Now in case of a vertical cylinder, the information is like this. in case of a vertical cylinder, condensation, outer surface in the vertical cylinder, vapor is there, we can use the expression for vertical flat plate provided the diameter of the cylinder is much higher than the thickness of the liquid film. Then we can use it. This is another information. Today everything will be informative, no deduction, nothing, just for your information. Another information I tell you, because of the turbulence, it has been found experimentally without going for any analytical results, the expression developed in the laminar flow for heat transfer coefficient is getting enhanced by a factor of 1.2 to 1.3, that is 20 to 30%. So sometimes in industry they gave this allowance to evaluate the heat flux and design the condenser accordingly. And with this I will end this discussion on condensation. Now we will move to boiling heat transfer. It's only one. Now I will discuss the boiling heat transfer. Now boiling is a very complicated heat transfer phenomenon, both from fluid dynamical and heat transfer point of view. This you will understand when I will explain this. So only a qualitative picture of the boiling heat transfer and some pertinent information will be given in this class. And frankly speaking, the analysis of boiling heat transfer is very tough. It is much beyond the scope of your syllabus, the scope of your studies at the moment. Now boiling is just the opposite of condensation. Here what happens, if a liquid at saturation temperature comes into contact with any hot body whose temperature is above the saturation temperature, the boiling starts. For example, if we consider liquid water at 1 atmospheric pressure and 100 degrees Celsius, as you know 100 degrees Celsius is saturation temperature corresponding to 1 atmospheric pressure. If you give a certain amount of heat to the water, it will start boiling, and the boiling will take place so long you supply the heat until and unless the entire water will be converted into steam at 100 degrees Celsius, and the reverse happens in the condensation. So therefore in the boiling, one has to have a temperature source whose temperature is greater than the saturation temperature. Now this boiling is usually accomplished in practice by having a heating surface or the source which is submerged in a pool of liquid, and that is known as pool boiling, and that is known as pool boiling. Pool boiling. Now to explain the pool boiling, let us have a very simple figure like this. Let us consider a surface like this, and let us consider some solid which is the heat source, whose temperature is TW, and this is liquid. Let us consider water for our, this has a free surface, easy understanding, water, whose temperature, this for example atmospheric water, so TW has to be greater than the saturation temperature. In atmospheric pressure water saturation temperature is 100 degrees Celsius, it has to be more than that, TW. Now there may be two options. The bulk of the water may be at saturated temperature 100 degrees Celsius, or maybe at a temperature lower than the saturated temperature, but the surface is higher than that. So in one case, when it is a saturated temperature, it is known as saturated boiling. I am not writing everything on the board, you just write saturated boiling. And when the temperature is below the saturation temperature, as you know the terminology used in thermodynamics, the subcooled state, so therefore it is known as subcooled boiling. So let us consider a saturated boiling case where the water is at the saturation temperature. My drawing is not that good, so this line is straight, free surface. So water is at saturated temperature Ts. Now what happens? The water near to this is having a temperature more than the saturation temperature. So the nucleation or the initiation of the vapor boiling takes place at the surface. And how does it take place? It takes place through the formation of small, very tiny vapor bubbles, steam bubbles. And the places where this takes place, small tiny bubbles, is known as nucleation site. And this nucleation of small tiny bubbles depends not only on the temperature requirement. Temperature is the necessary condition, has to be higher than saturation temperature, but depends upon many other conditions. One of the conditions is that impurity in the liquid, the type of surface which enhances the nucleations. So therefore, the surface and liquid characteristics and the liquid impurities, this actually guides the formation of nucleation sites. But we are not going into all those deep things. We are just studying grossly the qualitative behavior. The nucleation of small tiny bubbles takes place. And then what happens? Big bubbles of different size grow and move towards the free surface. Now moves towards the free surface. What happens? That when the bubble nucleation takes place, it is detached from the surface. Now the bubble may grow, may collapse before reaching to the surface. There are two options. Now whether a bubble will collapse, let us consider individual bubbles. Individual bubbles are flowing. Whether the bubble will collapse or the bubble will grow in size and go to the free surface and ultimately it will collapse, this all depend upon the pressure, temperature and the surface tension property of the vapor and liquid. How I will tell you. Let us now appreciate that the temperature profile is like that. If you draw, this side is y-axis and this side is temperature. So this is Ts at the surface, TW. This is TW at the surface. From TW is at asymptotically reaches. This is Ts. This is Ts. This is Ts. This asymptotically reaches to Ts. This is Ts. Rather, I should draw this way. This is the value of Ts is asymptotically reaches to, this is the value of Ts. Ts, I am drawing it in an exaggerated manner. This TW is not much above the Ts, but it shows like that this is Ts. So it goes from TW asymptotically to the Ts, saturation temperature. So what happens? The liquid near the surface and even above the surface is always at a temperature higher than the saturation temperature. This is a metastable state. You understand that this surface is at, for example, 110 degrees Celsius. This is done in a very exaggerated or amplified manner, and this is 100 degrees Celsius. So liquid temperature here is always more than 100 degrees Celsius. That means liquid at superheated state. This is a metastable state. Now what happens? A bubble which is formed, or a vapor bubble as you see, which is formed, whether it will grow or collapse depends upon the heat transfer. Now, because of the surface tension, the pressure within a bubble is higher than that of the liquid outside because of the surface tension force. You know that for a bubble it is force sigma by r if you consider the bubble to be a spherical one. Now at that pressure, the temperature is higher. The steam temperature should be higher than that of the saturation. That means the if we consider that water has to be at saturation temperature for a given pressure, for example, atmospheric pressure 100 degrees Celsius is the saturation temperature, but this pressure is more than 1 atmosphere because of surface tension. So steam temperature is more than 100 degree. Now depending upon the superheated metastable state of the water, heat will either come into the bubble or go out of the bubble. That means if the steam temperature or the vapor temperature is more than the outside liquid temperature, then the heat will go out and the vapor will condense and the bubble will collapse. But if it is other way, that's why I told it depends upon the surface tension characteristics, it depends upon the temperature and pressure of the liquid. Try to understand. And if it is other way, that liquid temperature at this metastable superheated state is still higher than the temperature of the vapor, then heat will go to the vapor, a bubble, and the bubble will grow bigger and bigger, and ultimately it will burst, because as it grows bigger, the pressure inside falls, because the surface tension force will be reduced because of the higher radius of curvature. This is the very lucid explanation. Very few books you will get this explanation. So this is the basic explanation for which the bubble will grow or collapse. But this is not the main picture. Picture is that number of bubbles will generate with time, and ultimately what happens, bubbles police each other and they flow into random, in a random manner with random size, different sizes. And as you go on increasing this temperature, you will see number of bubbles coalesce together and comes in the form of jets and columns of bubbles, and that create a big chunk of bubble to flow, and that is known as slug flow. That is known as slug flow. So there are various regimes. One is isolated bubble flow, isolated bubbles, then jet, vapor jet, all these things appear, vapor jet, and creates a slug flow. And therefore the entire flow becomes heterogeneous, two-phase heterogeneous flow, where liquid is there, number of bubbles with randomly moving, different sizes, they coalesce, they collapse, they form, sometimes the bubble ejects in the form of jets, they form a big chunk of bubbles and make slug flow. And this is entirely a discipline which people are pursuing in research, two-phase flow, where it is relatively easier to capture that by high-speed photography, the different regimes of this heterogeneous two-phase bubbly flow, and to explain the different regimes physically. But theoretically it is very tough, but still we do it theoretically with the aid of CFD, because analytical treatment cannot be applied here. It's such a heterogeneous two-phase flow. So therefore you can understand very much, it is not that easy of a free convection or forced convection flow over a flat plate or flow through a simple duct. So that's why the theory in boiling heat transfer is so difficult. But what happens? This typical two-phase flow makes a agitation in the liquid and makes a better mixing, creates turbulence, for which the rate of heat transfer or heat flux at the solid surface is enhanced. And this boiling heat transfer with this thing in your background can be explained in a much better way through the very classical and popular curves known as boiling curve, which I will show you now. Can I? This is the pointer. আসছে না তো ঠিক আছে আরে এটা হ্যাঁ এটা সাইজ এটা লেজার Now this is a standard boiling curve. What is meant by boiling curve? This question will be asked I tell you, nobody will ask you to make a scale analysis and derive the exact from exact solutions, the Poiseuille velocity distribution or the Nusselt number 4.36, 48 by 11. But the employer will ask you this question, what is a boiling curve? There will be something which will be useful for you because this curve is used in the practice. Now what a boiling curve means. So all these things you know, that boiling phenomena, that this is such a complicated phenomena. We know qualitatively how does it take place, and it is very difficult to make a theoretical analysis. This is a boiling state, liquid at superheated condition, heat transfer takes place. Let us consider let us see what is a boiling curve. Boiling curve is a curve where in the abscissa we put the excess temperature. Now excess temperature delta TE is defined in case of boiling as the difference between the solid surface temperature which initiates the boiling TW minus the saturation temperature. And this definition remains as it is even if the boiling is subcooled boiling. That means whether the bulk of the liquid is at saturated temperature or subcooled temperature doesn't matter, the excess temperature is defined like that. And ordinate, we have the heat flux, watt per meter square. This is the heat flux. Now what happened is that this curve, since this is in the abscissa, will be explained with the excess temperature, that is delta T, as the independent variable, and we will see how the heat flux, this is experimentally obtained curve, how heat flux is changing with that. Now initially this actually quantitative data, this is plotted in a log-log graph. So this quantitative data, it is not written in the figure, is for water at 1 atmospheric pressure. Otherwise the quantitative figures have got no meaning. This will vary from liquid to liquid. So long the excess temperature is up to 5 degree, that means 105 degrees Celsius, there is very insufficient bubbles generated, not at all. There is no nucleation at the surface usually. There is no trace of bubble, and the liquid is heated simply by free convection, as it happens for any fluid, that it is heated at the bottom, cold at the top, so it will go rising and there will be a free convection loop, free convection current takes place. So it is free convection, and the heat flux versus delta T follows a power law model in free convection which appears to be linear in a log-log plot. As you know, there are certain things you have to know readily because your employer will ask this question. Nevertheless, theory is the most important thing. It is a necessary condition. You must know the theory in depth, but at the same time not at the cost of certain practical information. Then those people will tell that you don't know anything. So convective heat transfer, there is a thumb rule that free convection, if the flow is laminar, heat flux is proportional to delta T to the power 5 by 4, because heat transfer coefficient is proportional to delta T to the power 1/4. That you have already come into picture, that we have seen, it has come into picture that Nusselt number in free convection is always proportional to Grashof or Rayleigh number to the power 1/4 in laminar free convection. That means heat flux is proportional to delta T to the power 5 by 4. Similarly, in turbulent flow, heat transfer coefficient is proportional to delta T to the power 1/3. This is for information just. And the heat flux is proportional to delta T to the power 4 by 3. So therefore, if somebody asks you, you can tell that the slope of this, slope of this curve depends upon laminar and turbulent. This appears to be a straight line. So from origin to A, this is a free convection flow. Then point A represent ONB, that means onset of nucleate boiling. Now this boiling with the nucleation site, that means with the vapor generated at the surface, is known as nucleate boiling. The boiling is nucleate boiling. So this nucleation starts. Oh, what is happening? That is the problem with me. So nucleation starts, and what happens, the isolated bubbles are generated, more and more bubbles are generated. So as we increase the delta T, the heat flux increases sharply. Now the point B is written to demarcate this region from A to B, which is specified by this temperature delta T change from 5 to 10 degree, which is the isolated bubbles regime. These are the different regime. This is the free convection regime, from origin to A, then A to B part is the isolated bubbles which grow in number. They collapse, but the flow is governed by the formation and movement of isolated bubbles. Then from B, what happens, I told the number of bubbles are so much that it is ejected from the surface in the form of jets. And this enhances the heat transfer much more by creating more mixing and turbulence in the fluid. And this regimes B to D is the jet and column regime, says B to D. But there is an interesting fact, within this jets and columns regime, a point C is an inflection point. What is that inflection point? This inflection point represents that the curvature is changed. That means the heat flux still increases, but with a decreasing rate, that the slope decreases, which means in terms of heat transfer coefficient, if you see, up to this point heat transfer coefficient increases with delta T, but beyond C heat transfer coefficient decreases with delta T, so that heat flux increases with delta T, not in the same proportion of increase in delta T. That means the slope decreases, and we see that there is a less decrease with delta T. This is flattened out after C. This is the inflection point where the slope changes its sign and curvature changes its sign from increasing to decreasing trend. And at D, incidentally, it reaches the maximum heat flux, which corresponds to 130 degrees Celsius for water at 1 atmospheric pressure. Here it is the maximum heat flux, after which a very interesting feature is found, that it drops. That means as we go on increasing the surface temperature, increasing the delta T excess temperature, this is dropped. Why the heat flux drops? The reason is that after some time, the number of bubbles at the nucleation site coalesce together and makes, just like a film condensation, a thin film of vapor. And the heating surface is blanketed with a vapor, film of vapor. And that film of vapor produces a additional thermal resistance, and the thermal conductivity of vapor is much lower than that of the liquid. So after the formation of the vapor, what happens? Suddenly the thermal resistance increases, for which the entire picture changes. From here, the nucleate boiling changes to a regime which is known as film boiling. This is transition zone. I will explain that. That means from this point onwards, the film boiling starts. That means a blanket of vapor takes place. This is not just number of nucleated bubbles, but a continuous vapor which puts an additional resistance because of its low thermal conductivity in the rate of heat transfer, for which the heat transfer or heat flux gets reduced with the increase in delta T and reaches a point minimum which is known as Leidenfrost point, after which it again increases. I will tell you afterward. But why this part is known as transition? That during within a regime where the nucleate boiling just is converted to the film boiling at delta T 30, up to delta T 120, the things becomes transition. It happens in all natural phenomena. Transition means sometime it is nucleate, sometime it is film. That means sometimes if you observe, it has been observed in experiment. I will show you the experimental setup. I am sorry that I cannot show you a video thing. It would have been much better. That sometimes there is a continuous vapor blanket, sometimes it disappears, number of tiny vapor bubbles. Again the blanket, again the vapor bubbles, which happens even in the transition from laminar to turbulent. You know that the transition takes place in a pipe flow at 2000 Reynolds number. But between 2000 to 2500, the Reynolds number, the flow becomes sometimes laminar, sometimes turbulent, sometimes laminar, sometimes. This is the peculiar or typical characteristics of a transition zone. That's why this is known as the transition film boiling, after which when the delta T is more than 120, there is no transition. There is a stable blanket of vapor film, and the boiling takes place through this vapor film. The bulk of the liquid is boiled, and thereafter what happens? obviously the temperature increases from the minimum point, it again goes on increasing, and at some high temperature radiation heat transfer will come into picture. So it is a monotonically increasing trend, but in practice we don't go to that range. So this is a typical boiling curve with different regimes. The onset of nucleate boiling, this is the isolated vapor regime, this is the jet regime, and this regime the heat flux increases tremendously in a steep rise. After C, the rise is not that steep, there is an inflection point where the heat transfer coefficient decreases, heat transfer decreases at a slower rate than that in delta T. After reaching that, this is dropped because the flame boiling starts. It is the onset of flame boiling, and this maximum heat flux point with the onset of flame boiling is known as the critical heat flux. What is critical heat flux? You must tell. This is the critical heat flux. Sorry, this is the critical heat flux, and then after that this drops and this becomes a transition regime within this delta T, after which this goes increasing, and this minimum point is known as Leidenfrost point. Now, the most interesting part which is asked to many students, even many experts, they cannot answer, that if you make an experiment in the laboratory, which was there in our heat transfer laboratory also, I don't know whether you have done the experiment with this or not, which was first done by Nikuyama, that is known as power control, heating apparatus. What is that? He made an experiment to determine the boiling curve. What he did, he gave a nichrome wire here for heating. This is the end where he applied a voltage E, potential difference, by electrically heating the nichrome wire, and he slowly varied the power so that it is known as power control method, and measured the temperature of the nichrome wire by a thermocouple and plotted the value of delta T, and he kept this water at a temperature of T saturation and measured the heat flux by an instrument. So what he observed in his curve, which everybody observed, we observed in our student days, and you have observed in your student days, I do not know whether you have done these experiments or not. The similar experiment was there in our laboratory, that after this curve here, maximum heat flux, this part of the curve and this part of the curve, this is given by a dotted line to show the transition nature, is missing. That means when we go on increasing the temperature, we see coolly that heat flux is increasing. We are very happy. We are relaxed taking T and readings we are taking from the temperature indicator and the heat flux indicator. So we see that this part. But after reaching this point, suddenly we see the wire is melted. Circuit is broken. The entire experiment is stopped. Why wire is melted? This is because, sorry, this way I cannot take class. This is because that the temperature we found after reaching this point suddenly jumps up to a very high value, even if I don't change the power. Even if I don't change the power at all by a thermostat or a variac, we control the power. Those of you who have done the experiments, you know, but suddenly it changes to a very high value, jumps, which is more than the melting temperature of the material. Why it happens? Because of the formation of the thin film of vapor, there is a drastic increase in the thermal resistance, heat flux. So therefore, at this temperature, so this power, for example, at this power which creates this temperature, because of this immediate reduction in heat transfer coefficient, temperature jumps. We cannot have any control. We cannot have any control. So the question comes, said then how? How then we can generate this curve? Yes, you think from your physical understanding. This curve to generate, you have to make an independent control of temperature, not by a power control. Here that's why sometimes very intelligent employer who are little theoretically biased, not like a routine employer, they ask that why this particular experiment is known as power controlled experiment. This is because we control the temperature by controlling the power, so that we don't have any fundamental grip over that temperature. You read my book, it is written in a very lucid, explanatory manner that it is not controlled like that. But when we reach that particular power which gives this temperature corresponding to this maximum heat flux, immediately instantaneously the heat transfer coefficient is reduced because of the formation of the vapor, and immediately vapor blanket, it jumps to a very high temperature. But if we could have controlled over the temperature, which numerically can be done and can make an infinite small, it's horrible, and if we can make an infinitely small resolution of temperature variation from here, we could have obtained this part of the curve. Similarly, in the cooling side, there is a hysteresis that after this, it suddenly jumps here to a lower temperature. So this curve, experimental curve, where we miss the part and have the hysteresis, is solely due to this power controlled method of doing the experiment, because there is no other way out by which we can make the experiment by an independent control of the source temperature, which we can vary at that point with a very small resolution. Is it clear to all of you? I think that this ends our discussion on boiling. Is there anything on boiling? Boiling heat transfer. Then next is I tell you, there is no point at all of mugging any formula, any empirical relation. But just for your information, I am telling you, in boiling, the heat transfer coefficients and the critical heat flux are given by several researchers from their experiments and standardized work. They have been published and they have been used by the industry people. There is no credit of mugging this formulae, but you must know that these equations are empirical equations which involve, apart from the temperature, density, all these things, surface tension coefficient, which is very important, sigma, and another is not very much well known, another factor which takes care of the surface liquid interactions. Some unknown parameter, they tune it to the empirical equation. So you will see all the empirical equations in the terms of temperatures, density, surface tension coefficient, okay, density difference obviously, and the enthalpy of boiling or vaporization, all these things are there. Professor Rosenau at MIT is one of the fathers in the heat transfer field of boiling heat transfer. He had several correlations known as Rosenau correlation. If somebody asks you, so can you write the Rosenau correlation? It is simple answer, sir, I do not know exactly the correlation. I cannot recollect it. There is no credit in it. So there are a number of correlations you can see from the book, but basically it expresses heat transfer coefficient and heat flux in terms of the pertinent variables that govern the mechanism of boiling, which I have explained. And if you know this thing, it is more than enough at this stage. Thank you.